Hey there, Adam. I wanted to, as my voice is running out, you're the 14th of these videos that I've done. They've run about 15 minutes apiece, so there's a lot of video recording that I've done today. I've taken you alphabetically, and I apologize. You're the last one on the list, so you're the last one to get the video done. Hopefully it doesn't put too much constraints on you trying to get this thing turned around and back to me. I want to give you some ideas on things that you could improve on here. There's not an awful lot. I'm going to talk through the whole thing just to maybe brainstorm of little things that you could do to make it even better. But you did well on the first one. Before we go any farther, I want you to go back and look at the files that I've attached to the feedback that I've given you. One is called 14 delivery driver. That's an updated document, Word document, where I have made some changes to your original file. I've changed the font to make it consistent with every other job description that we've got. I've changed some wording in places. I've done a little bit with the aesthetics and the formatting. I've added some phrases here and there. So we'll consider what you sent to me in the first draft as version 1. And I want you to delete that from your computer so there's no confusion whatsoever. I want you to take this one as version 2 and I want you to save that because I want you to modify that, keeping the formatting as best you can, to create a version 3 that you'll email me back, hopefully in the next 24 hours or so that I can get it loaded to our website. I might tweak what you give me to create a version 4. I don't expect that you'll have to do a third version of your own. You will do a second version that's minor. The first version was a lot of work. The second version is a little bit of work. Look at that to see what the new structure looks like. But really focus on the PDF file. In fact, you might want to print that out. I took your original file and I wrote on it. I made little comments and I circled things and made scratches and whatnot. I'm going to talk about those things, and if you have it printed out in front of you, you can make notes as we go, and it'll be a lot easier to create version 3. Now, assuming that you've got those two files looked at, the PDF printed out, let's talk about what's on here. What you did well, what you could improve on. Throughout all of it, even if you did well on something, think about it from the perspective of the person interviewing. Have you answered their questions? The idea behind this is that you tell them as much as you possibly can about the job in our company and the work environment so they can get excited about interviewing and they'll know how to prepare for that. The job summary is simply an overview of the main highlights or the purposes or the objectives of the job. It's a little broader than the functions. The functions are the things that you do to accomplish the objectives that are in the summary. So from a delivery driver, the basic functions or the basic concepts of the job is that somebody that has purchased our flooring or our cabinetry or whatever has said, I don't want to load it up in my truck and take it home and install it. I want somebody to bring it out here and install it for me. So your job is to get it from our place to their place, to do it in a timely manner, to do it in a time that's convenient to them, in a way that it doesn't damage the equipment. That's the basic function, the basic summary of this job. Pick up, load, deliver, unload supplies and merchandise. Make sure that you distinguish between taking stuff to the people who have bought it from somebody that's in our warehouse. Don't make it look like it's warehouse oriented at all. So a lot of what you got in the summary is great. The way that you behave and perform isn't necessarily a summary of what the job is. That's a little bit more about the person who's going to do the job. So the first two sentences, or at least the first sentence, you might elaborate on a little bit to give some more of the context of behind getting it from our place to their place and what's expected of that. But you're pretty good with what you've got. The essential functions then are the things that you do on a regular basis to accomplish those objectives. Determine the safest way possible. That's a little bit wordy, basically saying plan your route appropriately so that it's fast and you arrive on time, whatever. Load and unload. Getting it off the truck into their place so that our installation people can do their job is a big part of it. Pre and post trip truck inspections, that's great. Driver's logs. Going back and picking up stuff that's delivered wrong. Paperwork is involved. Run errands for the company, that's great. Most of what you got there is really good. You'll notice that I put a disclaimer at the beginning about essential or reasonable accommodations. I don't know what kind of reasonable accommodations you make for a delivery driver. You can drive a truck, you can't. There's nothing I can do to the truck if you're handicapped. But we'll see what we can come up with. That's important to put there. And then otherwise, you're pretty good here. Again, think about it from the perspective of the candidate, and do they get a real good picture of what they have to do so that they can prepare for their interview. The job context is part of this that you might not see in the real world too often. In the real world, you'll probably see the summary and the functions, but you may not see the context. But the context is the environment that you're going to do those functions in. And it helps us to answer some questions as we're looking to interview. So I've included them here because I want you to think about the environment or the context. Supervision received. You're on the right track here. I want you to go into a little bit more detail. The idea is that I, as the candidate, can get your org chart and I can see a box that says delivery driver. There's a line out of the top of it, and there's another box, reporting structures. I want to know who I report to. You're going to report to the warehouse manager. That's great. Occasionally, general manager, sales manager, human resource manager, that's fine. But that doesn't tell me enough. Just knowing that I report to that person doesn't give me the confidence that they're going to be there when I need them. So I would say that let's add a little bit here that says you'll report to the warehouse manager who will be on site 90% of the time. And when this person's not on site, these other resources are available, or the warehouse manager can be reached through email or cell phone. So not only do I know who I report to, but I'm confident that they're there when I need them and I can reach somebody when they're not available. The available guidelines, you're on the right track again. You will have questions, and you don't want to go to your boss all the time. You want other resources you can go to. So employee handbooks, you got it. Interactive website, intranet, mentors, contacts. There are also going to be policy manuals, procedures manuals, navigation systems, company maps. There's probably in the glove compartment of the truck that you're driving some sort of a little handbook that has basic truck maintenance or county maps or whatever. You're on the right track here, but I'd really do some brainstorming to see what else we could put in here that could give them confidence that there's lots of places I can go to get answers. Accountability and consequence, smooth operation, delivery of goods. That's the key accountability, is timeliness and safety and the quality of the merchandise, representing our organization well. Those are the main accountabilities, I think, for this job. What could happen if it doesn't? If you damage goods, taking them from our place to their place, we've lost money. That's a consequence. If you're late and they're not home, we got to reschedule it. That's a consequence in terms of wasted time. If you're not pleasant with them, they have a bad experience, they don't shop here again. That's a consequence. Or they tell their friends, that's a consequence. So there are consequences to the organization in terms of financial things and reputation, maybe legal things. There's also consequences to you as an employee, reprimands, termination of employment, those kinds of things. So make sure that some of that is represented. A lot of that is in there. In this particular case, you may be a little bit too wordy. You might want to condense that just a little bit, but you're in the right ballpark there. Personal contacts. This is not an island unto itself. You will interact with people inside and outside, and you've identified a lot of those things. The internal folks. The one obvious thing that you haven't addressed here is that you're going to have contact with customers, maybe vendors, as you take things back or whatever. So let's add those kinds of things. Make sure you talk about who they are, how frequently this happens, and the nature of the contact. You're almost perfectly there. Supervision. I wouldn't be so definite about your answer here. This position will not oversee. You might want to hedge a little bit by saying something like, normally this position won't have supervisory authority over other employees, although we could ask you to help mentor new drivers, or we could ask you to assist with a more experienced driver, or be on some sort of a committee where you might be asked to be a leader or something. Supervision isn't always management and authority. Sometimes it's informal, so let's build in the possibility that those things could exist. Physical demands. You're going to be driving a lot. You're going to be in a sedentary position. You're going to be sitting most of the time. You're going to have to lift heavy stuff. all that stuff you've got in there. Just make sure there's not anything else physical. The truck could get very hot, especially if the air conditioning doesn't work. You might want to think about things like that. Work hazards, certainly OSHA, where everybody is subjected to that. Certainly we want to say that we've got a safe environment, that we keep our employees well cared for. But what kind of hazards are there? Yeah, certainly people who spend lots and lots of time driving have things that affect them mentally and emotionally and whatnot that don't occur to other kinds of jobs. So let's think about those kinds of things. There's a potential hazard. There's always the possibility of accidents. There could be injuries related to accidents or things like that. One of the hazards could be that you get injured moving stuff around. Those are hazards. And while we don't want to discourage people from applying for our jobs, we do want to be realistic and say this is not utopia. You could say that there aren't any major hazards, but there are certainly minor things that could occur from time to time, and these are some examples of what they are. The personal demands are those things that take us away from our personal obligations, like our family or our hobbies or things like that. And basically what you want to know applying for this kind of job is this: am I gonna be able to walk away from here at 5 o'clock and separate my work life from my personal life? If not, what are the things that I need to be expecting in terms of the personal demands? Overtime, holidays, weekends, you've addressed that. Certainly travel in the sense that you're delivering things, but are you ever going to have to travel overnight somewhere, spend the night, be away from your family? You've kind of addressed most of that. Just again, look at it from the applicant's perspective and see if it's addressed everything you could possibly think of. If you were the one applying, can you think of anything that you have not, as the HR person, put into this that they would want to know? Now go back to the essential functions. And say, what do you have to know to be able to do this? You got to know how to use GPS. You got to know the basic city. You got to know how to lift properly. You got to have the ability to lift properly. You've got to have the skills of customer service, those kinds of things, prioritization. Most of that you've got. Again, just look at whether or not there's anything that seems logical that you may have overlooked, just from the candidate's perspective. Under the education, I'd hold off on the must-pass drug test. We'll add that in later. I think I've already done that. It requires a high school diploma or GED. You might say under experience, you've said 2 years driving experience required, but you might also want to add that it's a clean driving record, no accidents, no tickets, things like that. But realistically, 2 years of driving experience, that basically means that you have to be 18, right? Because anybody who is 20 has got 2 years of driving. You might want to be more specific. 2 years of delivery driving experience or that kind of thing, because it's not just driving a car, driving a truck, or the particular kind of truck that we've got in the conditions that we're going to have. So let's go a little bit more in depth on the experience. And licenses, Class A CDL, no restrictions. That's the clean driving record. Forklift certificate preferred. Yeah, we've got warehouse people that normally will do that for you, but in the case that maybe there's not a warehouse person available, yeah, and being able to do that is helpful. I think that's the basics of it. You've done a really good job with this thing. There are a couple of things that I can, as I've done in this video, have suggested you might consider beefing up a little bit or rewording. In most cases, your colleagues have had sections that I've said, eliminate that section and start over, and I haven't done that with you. You've done a real good job with this. The biggest complaint I had about this is that you didn't really use the format that I gave you. The font is different, but I was able to correct that pretty easily, and you'll see when you look at that doc file that I've done that. So just make these updates. Email me a newer file, hopefully sometime on Thursday. As I'm looking at my clock right now, it's 11:45 p.m. on Wednesday, so I'm not giving you a whole lot of time. But I indicated that depending on what kind of feedback I wanted to give you, the turnaround time would be kind of short on this. You may have spent several days or a week working on the first draft, but with what you've got and the suggestions I've given you, hopefully the second draft goes pretty quickly. If I can get that back by the evening on Thursday, and I can make little tweaks if necessary, our IT guy can load these things to the website on Friday, and the business communication students can start looking on Friday. You may have requests for interviews Friday afternoon, Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday. So we're moving very quickly into the next round. And hopefully having this good feedback helps you to really nail down what your questions are and what your matrix is going to look like. So put a little bit more effort focusing on this, getting me a really, really top-notch third draft, updating my second draft, and let's see where we go from there. If you have questions, give me a call, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to clarify some thoughts or to brainstorm a little bit more with you. Otherwise, you're really close. You're on the right track, and I'm looking forward to what comes next. Keep it up.